Welcome, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into The World Beyond Your Head by Matthew B. Crawford.
Oh, a fascinating choice.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about Crawford is, well, he's not your typical academic.
Right.
He actually spent years as a motorcycle mechanic before diving into philosophy.
So he brings this really unique hands-on perspective to the whole discussion about attention.
Exactly. It's not just theoretical for him, he's lived it.
And he's asking this really crucial question. How can we reclaim our focus and engage more meaningful with the world in this age of constant distraction, right?
Yeah, it's like we're all drowning in information and stimulation these days.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's dive into some of Crawford's key ideas here.
Okay.
He starts off with this concept of an attentional commons.
Right.
What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, he compares it to, like shared resources, clean air or water. Just like we need those things to thrive, he argues that we also need a mental space, where our attention isn't constantly bombarded.
It's like our attention is being polluted.
In a way, yeah. He argues that things like advertising, technology, just the sheer volume of information we encounter daily are encroaching on that space.
So it's like our attention is being pulled in a million directions all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're losing the ability to just focus.
The focus on what truly matters.
Exactly. And he uses this funny, well, satirical anecdote from The Onion to really drive this point home.
Whoa, which one?
Remember the one about the guy at the social gathering?
Oh, yeah, right. The one who's completely overwhelmed by his to-do list.
Even though he's supposed to be, relaxing and enjoying himself with friends.
It's so relatable, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We've all been there.
Like physically present, but mentally, miles away.
Totally.
Eh.
Have you experienced those moments where you just feel like you can't escape that mental clutter?
All the time. I think it's become, well, almost a defining feature of modern life, this
Yeah.
feeling of being constantly on, constantly available.
Even when we're supposed to be off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we navigate this? I mean, does Crawford offer any strategies for reclaiming our mental space?
Well, he makes a key distinction between what he calls jigs and nudges.
Jigs and nudges, okay.
Yeah, essentially two different ways of shaping behavior and focus.
Okay, so break that down for me. What are jigs exactly?
Think of it like this: a physical or informational structure that kind of guides our actions.
Okay.
A great example, like a short order cook in a busy kitchen.
Okay.
The layout of the workspace, the placement of tools, ingredients, it all acts as a jig to help the cook work efficiently, especially under pressure.
Like a system that minimizes distractions.
Right. Or think about a skilled motorcyclist navigating a challenging road. They're relying on feedback from the curves, the road surface, the feel of the motorcycle.
It's almost like the environment itself is guiding their actions.
Yeah. It's about creating, systems to streamline our thinking.
To keep us focused.
Precisely.
So jigs are kind of like external support structures, right?
Yeah.
Like they help us stay on track, avoid getting sidetracked.
Exactly. So then you have nudges.
Okay, so how do those differ?
Well, they're more subtle.
Okay.
More like attempts to influence behavior, but without actually restricting choice.
Oh, okay.
Like, a classic example is an opt-out 401k plan.
Okay.
You're still free to choose whether or not to participate.
Right.
But framing the choice in a certain way makes you more likely to enroll.
It's like a gentle push in a certain direction.
Exactly. A gentle push.
So jigs are more direct and nudges are more subtle.
Yeah. Operating in the background.
But how does this all tie back to the larger issue of, reclaiming our attention?
Crawford argues that nudges are often used to compensate for the dismantling of cultural jigs that once supported behaviors we now consider like virtuous.
Oh, interesting.
Like saving money, for example.
Okay, yeah.
In the past, we relied on cultural norms and traditions to encourage saving.
Right, like it was just ingrained in us.
Exactly. But those norms have eroded.
And now we have nudges to try to fill that gap.
Exactly. Things like automatic savings deductions.
It's almost like we're trying to engineer behaviors that we've lost the natural support systems for.
In a way, yeah. It makes you think, where else are we being nudged without even realizing it?
Yeah, all the time, probably.
Think about the design of websites and apps. They're full of nudges.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Carefully crafted to keep us engaged, keep us clicking.
Endless scrolling, notifications popping up, yeah.
It's a constant battle for our attention.
Absolutely. And these nudges aren't just online either, right? I mean, think about like supermarkets.
Oh, yeah.
Impulse buys strategically placed near the checkout.
Right, right. It's everywhere. We're constantly being nudged to consume more, spend more, engage more with technology.
It's like a constant barrage of, well, of subtle manipulation.
In a sense, yeah.
I mean, where do you see these forces operating in your own life?
Oh, for me, it's definitely the notifications,
Yeah.
the constant stream of updates, emails. I have to actively work to set boundaries,
Yeah,
to create space for focused work and meaningful interactions.
totally. It takes a conscious effort to resist, like all those nudges,
Yeah, it does.
to create space for what truly matters. Now, Crawford doesn't stop there. He also explores this concept of embodied perception.
Right.
So what's that all about?
He draws on the work of psychologist James J. Gibson, I think,
Okay.
to explain how perception isn't just passively receiving sensory data.
Okay.
It's an active process involving our bodies and how we interact with our environment.
So it's not just our brains processing information.
No.
It's our whole being engaged in the act of perceiving.
Exactly. He argues that our bodies aren't just vessels for our minds. They play a crucial role in how we experience and understand the world around us.
It's like our body's another sense organ.
In a way, yeah.
I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like how differently we experience things depending on whether we're walking or running or driving.
Absolutely. Crawford even uses this, this memorable anecdote of a hockey player instinctively licking his hockey stick
Okay.
to highlight this strong bond between an athlete and their equipment.
Wow, that's such a vivid image.
It is. He's illustrating how deeply intertwined our physical actions and sensory experiences are,
Yeah.
especially when we become skilled at something.
And speaking of skill, how does Crawford link this idea of embodied perception to the development of expertise?
He brings up the concept of ecological control,
Ecological control, okay.
where the environment itself helps guide our actions, especially when we're performing skillfully.
Okay.
Picture like toddlers learning to walk. Okay, yeah.
They're not consciously calculating every muscle movement.
No.
They're responding to feedback from their surroundings,
Yeah.
constantly adjusting and refining their movements.
This is like their bodies intuitively learn to read the environment.
Exactly. Intuitively. And Crawford argues that overthinking can actually hinder skill performance, particularly in high-pressure situations.
So it's about trusting your instincts.
Yeah, letting your body take over.
Like that flow state, right?
Exactly.
Where you're so absorbed in the task that everything just clicks into place.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced that kind of flow where your body seems to just know what to do without conscious effort?
Oh, definitely. When I'm playing music, I often enter a flow state. My conscious mind kind of steps back,
Wow.
allows years of practice and experience to guide my actions.
That's fascinating. It's like your body has its own intelligence.
In a way, yeah.
It's amazing how Crawford connects all these seemingly disparate ideas.
Yeah.
The attentional commons, jigs and nudges, embodied perception.
He's painting this really rich picture of how we interact with the world.
He is. But he also delves into the darker side of all this.
Oh, okay.
The forces that are deliberately manipulating our attention for their own gain.
Oh, that's a good point.
And he uses machine gambling as a prime example.
So it's not just about mindless entertainment. There's a calculated strategy behind these machines.
Absolutely. He explains how modern slot machines use psychological tricks like near misses.
Oh, yeah.
Variable reinforcement schedules to create a sense of anticipation.
Yeah.
Keep players coming back for more.
It's like they're exploiting our desire for stimulation.
And our susceptibility to addiction.
For profit. I mean, you might think,
yeah.
well, I don't gamble, so this doesn't apply to me.
Right, right.
But think about how social media operates.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Notifications are like those near misses,
Exactly.
keeping us checking back for more,
Keeping us hooked. That's what Crawford calls effective capitalism,
Effective capitalism, okay.
where our experiences are carefully manufactured.
Right, to keep us engaged.
Yeah.
But often at the expense of our well-being.
Exactly.
It's unsettling.
It is, and it raises serious questions about the societal implications of normalizing addictive behaviors.
Especially when it comes to personal responsibility and freedom.
Right, because if our choices are being manipulated, how free are we really?
That's a profound question. And Crawford's work isn't just about understanding our minds.
No.
It's also a critique of the forces shaping our attention and even our very selves in this modern world.
Absolutely. It's kind of unsettling to think about how easily our attention can be, well, manipulated.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just our wallets, right? I mean, this constant pressure to engage, it has to affect our mental well-being too.
Right. It's not just feeling distracted. It's about how all this constant engagement impacts our sense of self. Crawford brings in the work of Elaine Ehrenberg here to kind of explore this idea further.
Okay, so what does Ehrenberg add to this conversation?
Well, he examines the rise of depression in modern society, and he connects it to this pressure to constantly perform and achieve. This ties back to that, well, to that ideal of the autonomous, self-made individual that's so pervasive in our culture.
So you're saying this pressure to always be on, to strive for success, it can actually contribute to feelings of inadequacy and exhaustion.
That's exactly what Ehrenberg suggests. Yeah. He argues that this relentless pursuit of self-improvement can leave us feeling, well, feeling overwhelmed and just depleted.
Yeah, it's like we're always trying to live up to this ideal that's ultimately unattainable.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
it's like the weight of all that freedom becomes unbearable.
Yeah.
If we're solely responsible for our own happiness,
Mm.
then any setback feels like a personal failing. Do you ever feel that pressure?
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere in our culture. It's magnified by social media too,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We're constantly presenting these curated versions of ourselves.
It's exhausting. It makes you wonder if there's a healthier approach to self-development, one that recognizes our limitations and maybe embraces our imperfections rather than striving for this impossible ideal.
Mhm.
Does Crawford offer any, I don't know, any insights into how we might navigate this tension between the pressure to perform and the need for self-acceptance?
Well, he introduces this really interesting concept called the erotics of attention.
The erotics of attention. Okay, I have to admit, that sounds a little provocative.
It does, yeah, but it's actually a more gentle approach than it might initially sound.
You get?
What Crawford is suggesting is that discovering objects of genuine interest, of beauty in the world, can actually be a source of positive energy and motivation.
So instead of chasing external validation,
Right.
it's about finding things that genuinely spark our curiosity and passion, things that make us, I don't know, make us feel alive.
Exactly, yeah. It's about being captivated by something that draws us out of ourselves.
So it's not about passively consuming entertainment. It's about engaging with something that resonates with you on a deeper level.
Yes, and he contrasts this with, well, with what he calls this narcissistic tendency to construct meaning from experiences just to serve our own psychological needs.
It's the difference between seeking validation and, and truly engaging with something that challenges you, something that expands your understanding of the world. What are some things that do that for you? Things that genuinely capture your attention?
Oh, for me, I find a lot of solace and focus in nature, similar to you, but I also, well, I experience that captivated attention when I'm grappling with a complex problem. Or when I'm really absorbed in a piece of music, those moments where time seems to disappear, incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like we both find flow and purpose in those moments of deep engagement.
Yeah, we do.
And that brings us to Crawford's idea of reclaiming the real.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways from this part of his work?
Well, he urges us to move away from the screen-mediated abstract relationship with the world and re-engage with the real physical world
Yeah.
and its inherent challenges.
It's not about rejecting technology altogether. It's about finding that balance,
Exactly, finding that balance.
making sure that technology isn't dictating our experiences or defining our reality.
He sees a lot of value in skilled practices, in crafts, things that demand our full attention. He uses the tradition of organ making as a powerful example.
Okay, so things that connect us to the material world, things that require us to work with our hands.
Exactly. He emphasizes the importance of embodied knowledge,
Yeah.
the kind of understanding that comes from working with our hands and engaging directly with materials and processes.
The difference between reading about something and actually doing it.
Right. There's a depth of understanding you can only gain through firsthand experience.
So it's about bridging that gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application.
Yes, and that kind of embodied knowledge, it's often transmitted through generations. It connects us to a legacy of skill and craftsmanship.
I love that. It reframes the relationship between tradition and innovation.
It does, but how can someone who's not an artisan apply this to their life.
Yeah, what are some tangible ways we can cultivate a more meaningful connection with the real world in our everyday lives?
Well, Crawford argues that even in seemingly mundane activities, we can discover opportunities to engage more deeply with the physical world.
Okay.
Consider cooking, gardening, woodworking.
Yeah,
All these practices demand attention.
right.
They require us to learn through trial and error, and they help us develop a feel for materials and processes.
It seems like we've become so accustomed to, I don't know, to instant gratification and the ease of digital interfaces that we've lost touch with the satisfaction that comes from working with our hands and creating something tangible.
That's a crucial point. Crawford emphasizes the importance of resisting the temptation to outsource all our practical needs. He argues that when we embrace the challenges of the real world, whether it's fixing a leaky faucet or building a bookshelf, we gain a sense of agency and mastery that's often absent in our digital lives.
There's a real sense of empowerment in knowing you can solve problems and create things with your own two hands.
Right.
It reminds us that we're not just passive consumers.
Right.
We have the capacity to be active creators.
Exactly. And those experiences of creation and problem solving, they can be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
They link us to a long history of human ingenuity and resourcefulness.
It's fascinating how Crawford connects all these ideas about attention, skill, engagement with the real world to a broader critique of modern society. What are some of the societal implications he sees arising from this shift away from embodied experience and toward a more, I don't know, a more abstract, screen-mediated way of life?
Well, he argues that this shift has led to a sort of cultural amnesia. We've forgotten the value of skilled practices,
Right.
the deep satisfaction that comes from mastering a craft. He's concerned that we're becoming increasingly reliant on experts and specialists to address problems we once would have tackled ourselves.
Yeah, it's like we're losing the confidence and the practical know-how to be self-reliant.
Exactly. And that dependence can make us more vulnerable to manipulation by those who control the systems and technologies we rely on.
But if we're losing this connection to the real world, how does that affect our relationships with other people?
That's a great question. It brings us to some profound questions about human connection and the nature of individuality. Crawford draws on the work of philosopher Søren Kierkegaard to explore the challenges of achieving genuine individuality in a mass democratic society.
Kierkegaard, I'm familiar with his work on existentialism, but how does that connect to Crawford's exploration of attention and the real world?
Well, Kierkegaard was deeply concerned with the tendency towards conformity and leveling in modern society. He believed that true individuality requires differentiation, a willingness to stand apart from the crowd and embrace one's unique perspective. Crawford sees this as a crucial counterpoint to the homogenizing forces of mass culture and the pressure to conform to social norms.
So it's not enough to simply be yourself. You have to actively cultivate your individuality.
Exactly. And that process of differentiation, it can be uncomfortable. It requires vulnerability, risk-taking, embracing the possibility of failure.
But it's in those moments of vulnerability and risk-taking that we truly discover who we are and what we stand for, right?
Absolutely. And Crawford suggests that the kind of embodied engagement he advocates for, learning a craft, mastering a skill, tackling real-world challenges that can foster the resilience and self-reliance that are necessary for true individuality to flourish.
It's like the process of struggling with a difficult task, of pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. It builds a kind of inner strength and confidence that a purely virtual world just can't replicate.
Right. Right.
And that inner strength it's crucial for navigating the complexities of relationships, for engaging with others in a meaningful way.
He argues that when we're overly focused on our own comfort and convenience, when we avoid the friction and frustration that comes with engaging with the real world, we become more self-absorbed and less attuned to the needs and perspectives of others.
So we lose touch with that shared human experience of struggle and resilience.
Right. It makes it harder to empathize, to connect on a deeper level.
So Crawford is suggesting that our relationship with the real world, our willingness to engage with its challenges, it directly influences our capacity for meaningful connection with others.
That's right. And that lack of empathy can lead to social isolation, where we're less willing to reach out to collaborate. It's a sobering thought. But if Crawford's right, then the solution isn't about retreating from the world or rejecting technology altogether.
It's about finding ways to engage more deeply,
Yes.
to cultivate our skills and passions, to embrace the challenges that help us grow.
Exactly. It's about striking that balance,
Between the digital and the physical, between individual pursuits and collective endeavors, between comfort and challenge.
It's in that space of, well, of dynamic tension that we often find the most meaning.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that the good life, it's not about escaping difficulty or seeking constant pleasure. It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience.
The joys and sorrows, the triumphs and failures, the moments of connection and solitude.
Beautifully put. And it's a reminder that the journey of self-discovery and growth, it's ongoing. It's about constantly seeking new challenges, expanding our horizons, finding ways to connect more deeply with the world and with each other. This has been a truly insightful dive into Crawford's work. His exploration of attention, it's so much more than just a cognitive exercise. It's a profound reflection on the human condition.
Absolutely, and it's a call to action, right?
It is.
Urging us to be more mindful of how we direct our attention, to reclaim our agency, and engage with the world in a more conscious and deliberate way.
Yeah. It's not just about those individual moments, though, right? It's also about, well, recognizing the importance of shared attention.
You mean like in fostering a sense of belonging and collective purpose?
Exactly. Think about the difference between, say, a group of people passively watching television
Okay.
versus a group of musicians jamming together, each person contributing their own unique skills and perspectives.
Yeah, like creating something new and vibrant. In that shared creative endeavor, attention becomes a collaborative act.
Right. It's a way of connecting with others and building something bigger than ourselves. And this isn't limited to, artistic pursuits. Think about community gardens, volunteer organizations, even book clubs.
Yeah, those are all spaces where people come together to share their attention, their knowledge, their passions.
Right. Creating a sense of collective purpose and belonging.
It reminds us that attention isn't just, a cognitive capacity. It's also a social and ethical force.
It really is. How we choose to direct our attention, both individually and collectively, it shapes the world we live in, the relationships we form. It's a powerful thought. It suggests that reclaiming our attention isn't just about, personal well-being. It's also about creating a more just and humane society.
When we prioritize the things that truly matter, the needs of others, the health of our communities, it's like we're shifting from a mindset of scarcity and competition to one of abundance and collaboration.
Absolutely. But in a world that's relentlessly competing for our attention, how do we resist the allure of all those distractions? How do we cultivate a more intentional, values-driven approach to how we spend our time and energy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. I think it begins with awareness. Recognize those moments when you feel your attention being hijacked, pulled away from things that hold real significance for you. Scrutinize the design of technologies and systems that are engineered to exploit your vulnerabilities and keep you perpetually hooked. Become a more discerning consumer of information and experiences. Make conscious choices about what you let into your mental space.
It's about setting boundaries, creating space for the things that nourish our souls and align with our values.
Yeah.
Whether it's, carving out time for nature, engaging in creative pursuits, or simply having meaningful conversations. These acts of intentional attention become, in a way, they become acts of resistance.
I like that. Acts of resistance against the homogenizing forces of mass culture. It's a reminder that we're not helpless in the face of all this. We have the ability to choose, to resist, to create a world where attention is valued, nurtured, and shared.
This has been such an enlightening deep dive. Crawford's work has given us so much to think about, so many different approaches to the challenge of living a more attentive and meaningful life. As we wrap up, could you share maybe a concise summary of the key takeaways for our listeners?
Of course. Let's distill Crawford's insights into, say, 10 key points.
Okay, I love it.
All right. Number 1, the attentional commons. Our attention is a valuable resource, easily exploited and depleted. We need to protect it like we protect clean air and water.
Absolutely.
Number 2, jigs and nudges. Recognize the subtle ways our behavior is being shaped by external forces. Are we consciously choosing, or are we being nudged towards certain outcomes?
That's a great point.
Number 3, embodied perception. Our bodies play an essential role in how we perceive and understand the world. Engage your senses, your physicality, to experience life more fully.
Yeah, get out of your head and into your body.
Exactly. Number 4, skillful action. True expertise arises from from a deep connection between mind, body, and environment. Practice cultivates this embodied knowledge that you can't learn from books alone.
It's about doing, not just thinking.
Exactly. Number 5, effective capitalism. Be aware of how your emotions and desires are being manipulated for profit. Choose experiences that genuinely nourish you, not just those that are designed to keep you hooked.
Yeah, be mindful of what you're consuming.
Number 6, the pressure to perform. Resist the societal pressure to constantly strive for this unattainable ideal. Embrace your imperfections, prioritize self-acceptance over self-optimization.
Love that.
Number 7, the erotics of attention. Seek out activities, relationships, experiences that genuinely captivate your interest. Find joy in the process, not just the outcome.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. Number 8, reclaiming the real. Step away from the screens and engage with the physical world. Cultivate hands-on skills, reconnect with nature, embrace the challenges of the material world.
Get your hands dirty.
Yes. Number 9, individuality and community. True individuality thrives in the context of community. Seek out shared experiences, collaborate with others, contribute to something larger than yourself.
We're not meant to be isolated.
And finally, number 10, intentional attention. Make conscious choices about how you direct your attention. Resist distractions, create boundaries, prioritize the things that genuinely matter to you.
That's a fantastic list. Thank you so much for guiding us through this insightful exploration.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to delve deeper into these ideas, experiment with ways to reclaim your attention, and share your own insights and discoveries along the way. Until next time, stay curious.